Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
I'm
Tired.
tired.
Yeah, me too.
Good
like
morning.
any other-
You guys hear me?
Yep.
I'm presenting in my pajama pants today.
Hello?
Nice.
I'm not getting any audio.
That's the one perk from not being in Helena so far.
Oh, wrong headset. Damn it.
I'm sure you could present in your pajama pants if you were in Helena as well.
We should have a pajama party one morning, like Friday morning. Wear your PJs. Screw it
Pajama
all.
sessions.
All right, Daryl, there's one other topic at the same time, so I might jump between the two.
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I want to see the
I'll
latest.
do a live session just for you right after.
Why, thank you. No.
Yeah.
Ah,
How's it been going, Ryan?
Well, pretty good.
Yeah.
Had a lot of engagement, a lot of people interested, just
Good.
stuff going on. I'm getting emails left and right. This moot coin thing is tough to keep up with.
I was wondering about that because, I was just sending you the game stats all last night.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
even sure how to keep up with it. Somebody who I don't know sent me a message and says, "Hey, have you done the game? We don't get any coins unless everybody answers the questions." I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, there's 1,000 moot coins on the line for those people. You better go help them out.
He said something about we're on the same team. I don't know what he means.
I don't know anything about that part either.
Or
Yeah.
we're in the same game group.
Yep.
I don't know.
I thought that you were doing the auction thing last night after the games.
No, the auctions are open until 3 p.m. today
Okay.
because they're all online. We don't have to do them synchronously.
The fun part is watching you with the microphone.
I know. I'm gonna miss that.
But we don't have Tipsy Emma this time either to steal all of our coins.
Oh, I am kind of glad, but also I'm interested to see what she would have done to hijack the digital system that we have set up. Because there's zero question she would have gamed it somehow.
She probably would have hit everybody up going, okay, can you transfer your coins to me? This is how you can do it.
Right, yeah. I made a special course activity. All you have to do is click on it and send everything my way.
Don't worry, it says your cousin, the Nigerian prince, but it's really me.
So my question, Ryan, is would you do this again? Like if you had a choice between an in-person and a virtual session, would you go live?
I don't know. Dan and I need to debrief about that.
Too early to know, maybe.
Yeah, because more people can come, which is better. The more
Right.
people you reach, the better you're serving the community. But
I kind of wonder, you guys are so connected there at the at the center that maybe you could do a hybrid thing where you've got the live session that's there, but then have
That
a
would be
camera in every
really
room
cool.
and share everything live.
yeah, we were talking about that. Of course, the logistics of setting up cameras in all these rooms that adds a
Right.
whole different layer of complexity.
And also it kind of wonders if it, if the virtual attendance would cannibalize the in-person stuff and you end up with low in-person attendance because everybody decides to sign in instead.
Well, I made this argument about teaching in the fall for everybody on my campus that it's asking too much of the teacher, or in this case, the presenter, to have students either
Right.
in person or at a distance at will, because then you have to build two different courses when we're
Right.
already asking so much of our teachers to teach in person or at a distance or fully online.
And then do both at the same time.
It's a crazy lift. It's a crazy thing to
Yeah.
ask people to do. So,
Though, Ryan, out of all the virtual conferences, and most of them I didn't even finish the first day, you guys always plan well, but you really pulled this off better than any of the other ones I've seen.
thanks, Catherine. I appreciate that.
So
It's been a wild ride. I felt like Mr. Toad.
I bet.
How many active participants do you have, Brian?
Well, we had 150 in the keynote yesterday, which was less than I expected. We have 715 people signed up. So I think a lot of people registered and then decided not to come because they didn't have any skin in the game because it was free, which is fine with us. We didn't really limit registration. So we're going to look at we've had IntelliBoard turned on all conference. So we're going to look at that afterwards and kind of try and get an idea of how people engaged, like was it the same people that were coming to all the conferences, or did we really have 600 attendees, but they came at 100 came at this time, 150 came at the next session, 120 came at, so yeah, we don't really know, but we're gonna peek down into that data. I'll let you know once we get it analyzed. I'm interested to see what happened.
I'd love to hear about that too. I'm trying to help a company move their face-to-face virtual for October. And really not sure how we're going to pull it off with this group.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hey, Ryan, should I have the Zoom chat available to me in Zoom here somewhere?
Okay, so while you're sharing your screen, there'll be a little red thing up top that says.
It moved it. God, I hate Zoom.
And then it hides. And then it hides the button.
I know. I use Zoom all the time. I thought, but normally the host. So I thought maybe it was just tucked away at the top of my screen.
No, you should have chat. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Daryl Tenter from Fortech Solutions, talking about automating Moodle processes, something that I could have used this conference, some more automated processes. So Daryl, go ahead and take it away.
Cool. Everybody hear me all right? I notice everybody's muted. That's fine if you want to stay muted. You don't need to. I don't mind noise unless there's like a train horn or a barking dog or something like that. But I've got a chat session in the course, and then I've got Zoom chat open, and feel free to unmute yourself or whatever. So ask any questions. Don't feel like you're interrupting me or anything like that. Okay. Thumbs up. Good. Everybody all right with that? So I know these sessions are a little different. When I do in-person training, I try to get everybody, talking and visiting and sharing and stuff. So it's a little different when I've got what looks like about 16 people in here and everybody's muted with cameras off. So, all right. So let me switch here. So yeah, like Ryan said, my name is Daryl. There's some relevant experience that I have, as much as that's worth. So for me, content development goes back a ways, way before Moodle, obviously, but just dealing with publication work and books and things like that. And I've been dealing with Moodle for about 15 something years, and I've been with Fortech for, I think it's about 5. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I became an Adobe certified Adobe Captivate specialist sometime last year. Some other experience there. One of these things may or may not be true. I've been doing instructor-led training since about 2004, 2005 for certification-based stuff for adult learners. So that's been classes of, typically 10 or less people come in that need to get certified in a certain area of expertise, and doing 1 week classes and things. And that actually goes to how I got to Moodle, because we were getting to the point where we couldn't keep up with, our capacity couldn't keep up with the demand. And so in 2005, we started looking at Moodle. 2004 was when I took all of our, how did I do this? I took PowerPoints and converted them to PDFs into a library with a dynamic table of contents, and we burned it onto a DVD, and we would mail that out with a textbook. So that was my first experience with remote learning. Was I still have one of the CDs. It's got a handmade stamped label and all this stuff. So we did that for about a year or two, and then I think in 2006 we started going to Moodle. All right, so this is where I want to kind of know who's in the room. I always do this in my sessions, like who's in the room with me. I'm expecting that most of the people here have some admin role or something with Moodle. So if you could, maybe put this in the chat, or, put it in the Zoom chat or the course chat, or just, unmute yourself and speak up. I want to make sure that you're in the right session here. So basically, everything we're talking about here is administrative stuff, dealing with admin or work. dealing with enrollments, registrations, grouping cohorts, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's see here.
I may be in the wrong room. I am an instructional coach, but
Okay.
not with this.
Yeah, so some of the stuff I'm going to talk about is going to require admin level access to the server. So
Okay.
you might advocate for some of these things, but if you don't have that type of access, this is not something you're going to be able to implement on your own. You'll need some, some assistance from people.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Take care.
Floyd. Hey, Floyd. Okay. Anybody else want to unmute themselves and say anything? Quiet group. No. Okay. All right. So, I don't usually like these things, the reality of online training. It kind of sounds a little bit negative, but for me and the people and the clients I've worked with, it can be an effective solution, but it comes along with tasks and responsibilities that can be a little bit problematic, especially from the admin and management side. And a lot of times, I think organizations underestimate how much that takes, and they put like that one person in charge of the Moodle site, and they just say, go run that, and make it work or whatever. So from my experience, having one or maybe two people in that role can be a little bit inefficient and sometimes risky. I've been in that spot myself where the entire online environment is on my desk, and that's kind of a risky thing for the organization, in my opinion. So here's kind of a rough agenda. I don't follow this. This isn't like section 1 through 5. It's just kind of like what we're talking about. So this thing that I'm showing you here is more of a case study than it is a here's how to do certain things, right? Like many things in Moodle, there's a half dozen ways to do it. These are just some of the things that we tried and eventually what we came up with to solve the problems that we identified. So hopefully some of these will resonate with you. Maybe some won't. Maybe you came up with a different method to do some of the things I'm talking about, and I'd love to hear from you if you have done that. So basically, we're identifying the problems that the customer had, considering automation stuff. A lot of the things that the admin was doing was just on his desk, right? It was his responsibility to handle these things. We tried and tested some solutions, we deployed, and then eventually ended up saving a lot of time and money, probably money because of time, because the site admin guy that was managing the whole system freed up a lot of his day where he just was not handling all these manual things that the plugins and such took over. So the situation with this company is that it's a retail organization. It's a music store on the East Coast. They have 47 stores, a central corporate office, and about 1,400 people scattered across those stores. Each store has multiple departments. So you picture you go in a music store, you got, guitars and stringed instruments and electronics and tech and repair and sales and management and HR, right? Each one of these stores, it works under the corporate umbrella, but each store is somewhat independent, meaning that the store managers are directly responsible for the store and the staff and the training and success metrics and sales and all these kind of things. But when it came to training, they didn't really have any role or responsibility or capabilities on the training site. They might be able to get in and like look at some information and see who completed a course or something like that. But they didn't really manage much, even though they were the manager of the store. The other issue was that corporate only wanted the training, and I think it's because some of the stuff is proprietary and they don't want people, sharing it or, getting it online wherever else and saying they were training, but they weren't because I was at home or something like that. So they wanted the training to be happening under the supervision of the managers at the store. So they wanted to limit to just the store locations. All the stores were on what's called a VPN, a virtual private network. So basically the store computers were not like on a public internet somewhere. They were all connected to the corporate network. The central Moodle administrator who I was working with worked at the corporate location, and he handled all of the user registration and management. Everything had to go through him. And you can imagine with 1,400 staff and 47 locations and turnover and new hires and people leaving and changing positions and getting promoted, it was just a little bit crazy for him to keep up with. And because of that, the store managers didn't have a lot of control. There was a lot of kind of backup and things like that, because things relied on that one person at the corporate office. And ultimately the staff and the management just weren't satisfied with the training because it was so efficient. It was something they needed, but it was just, at the same time, it was also something they just had to deal with. So the risk of that, from their case, and in my opinion, was a lot of miscommunication, right? There's messages going back and forth. The admin's dropping the ball on stuff because you just got so many things coming from so many different people. The company culture was affected, I think, to a certain extent. Being a music store, it's a very kind of social, relaxed, laid back environment, right? We're not selling, engineering equipment here. We're selling, musical instruments. So they want it to be kind of a fun, hip culture, so to speak. And the training environment kind of made it look really kind of antiquated and disconnected. It caused a lot of stress and burnout on the management parts because they were responsible for training, but they couldn't deliver it or manage it and report it, things like that. It was causing skill gaps because the training that the company was trying to provide for new products and sales techniques and onboarding new hires, things like that, that would lag. And so there's a skill gap that happens in there. The team members weren't connecting with each other, right? They want to promote continuity across the stores. Even though the stores operate independently, they want the users to interact with each other and learn from each other and team building and things like that. So that wasn't happening. And you end up with a lot of micromanagement at the administrative corporate level because they've got to deal with the individual users at the store who are technically the responsibility of the store managers, not the corporate manager. And it just caused a lot of inconsistent processes, right? Just people getting stuff done as best as they could. So overall, the situation they were in was really inefficient and troublesome. Any questions about any of that? I got 3 people here with cameras on and everybody else is muted, so I'll make sure that everybody's, feel free to say anything you need to. All right, so the company's training needs, we kind of backed up a little bit. When I work with organizations like this, it's like, okay, I think I understand the problems, but let's look at what your needs are. Let's back up a little bit, kind of get Moodle off of our vision and just kind of look at what you want. What are you trying to achieve here? And the primary thing, I think, from the kind of the marketing and intellectual property side of things is that they absolutely needed to have restriction by location. They did not want this training to happen outside the store. They didn't want the guys doing it on their phones from home, whatever. It was not something that was, up for discussion. It was a must-have. They needed employees, staff to register with the site, right? So everybody had a user account in Moodle. They need completed user profiles. They didn't even know really about custom profile fields, and maybe you don't either. So we had to look at that. They needed to know more information about the people than just, first name, last name, email addresses. They needed people to be enrolled in courses, and that needed to be driven by their job position, like what role they had in the company, also what department they worked in and what location they're at. So you can imagine you have everything from management to sales to inventory control, things like this, to particular departments, whether they're in, like I said, stringed instruments or, wind instruments or whatever. They're different departments. And then you have 47 store locations that had to be categorized as well. That leads into grouping. So now you decide, okay, well, we're going to do courses. Do we need to keep people in groups or not? Do they keep separate? How do we get them in groups? All of that stuff. And then we needed to report on all of this. So we needed to know, how often was training completed and did people complete training and all of this stuff. By the way, if you're asking or thinking about Moodle for Workplace, this process we went through was earlier last year before Moodle for Workplace was released. If they had, if Moodle for Workplace had been released, or if another product we work with, LearnBook, I had access to, reporting would have been a lot easier. Right now, they're doing custom SQL reports using the ad hoc database query thing, and it's working for them, but it's probably not as elegant as another solution might be. And then that reporting has to feed back to corporate, so corporate can then spend their time looking at success metrics for the individual store locations and the managements and things like that to see, is training having an effect? Is it making the improvements that they want? Are sales going up? Are staff happier? Do they feel more enabled with product knowledge, things like that? So that's that whole loop of having everything that we're doing here proving or somehow showing that it actually has the effect that we're looking for, right? So this is the big challenge for them, is managing training when you have all these users across all these locations without doing everything manually and spending a lot of time pushing stuff around. I won't go into how they were doing this. Just know that it involved a lot of CSV files and enrollment keys and private posts and sharing emails and manually pushing people around. I was just kind of flabbergasted when I saw what these guys were doing manually. So some of the solutions we started looking at to solve these problems, we're dealing with profile fields. You're going to see different ways you can use profile fields, either from a management perspective or from a user-driven perspective to take certain actions, right? So those can be triggers for certain things, conditions. Cohorts, is everybody here familiar with cohorts? I kind of underestimate how much people know about cohorts sometimes. I talk to people and they have no idea what it is or what its purpose is.
It took me an embarrassingly long time to learn how to use cohorts after becoming a Moodle administrator. It was like
Yeah.
a couple years down the road, and then I was like, oh, these solve a lot of problems.
Exactly right. Yeah, I talk to people internationally, and to anybody in the U.S. cohort, they may or may not even know what it means outside of Moodle, let alone what it does in Moodle. You talk to somebody in Europe, and they're like, "Yeah, it's a group. That's what we call groups. They're cohorts, right? Here's a
Yeah.
cohort of whatever."
I see a lot of people get confused between Moodle groups and Moodle cohorts.
Yeah. So the main thing here with cohorts is that it's a group of people at a site level that have some reason to be together in that group. But the key thing is that the cohort at the system level or the cohort at a category level, of course, category level, can be a source of people to automatically enroll into one or more courses with the role that the cohort method assigns to them and potentially in a particular group, right? So if you just have, a course and you want to put some people in it, that's fine. But if you have a situation where you have groups of people that are similar in some way, whether it's a job duty or a location or something like that, and because of that grouping at the system level, they need to be in one or more courses, then cohorts can save you a lot of time. I manage another site that delivers a lot of professional development training, continuing ed stuff. So students are coming in, and then we have teachers that come in that want to deliver training. Those 80 courses are divided across about 5 subjects. And so there's a variety of cohorts there that if somebody comes in and they're the master trainer, I just drop them into the cohort and they're automatically the teacher role in all 80 courses. Or maybe they're the teacher for group A and C, so I add them to those cohorts. Or they're a student that's worried about a particular section, so I'll put them in another cohort that puts them in group D as a student, things like that. So cohorts is something that I'll show you here more in a little bit. And then there's enrolling people based on a profile field. So maybe just because their profile field says something, put them in certain courses. There's also this idea of auto groups. So I have a course and let's say I have 20 courses, right? There's all these courses on different things, and some are specific to a product or a department or a location, things like that. So when I get people in here, I may want to group them by their store location, or I may want to group them by what department they're in, things like that. So auto groups is a plugin that I'll show you here. And then there's auto enrollment. Auto enrollment's another plugin that automatically enrolls people into a course based on some action that happens. Typically, it's as soon as you log in, then enroll you into the course. So in this case, we're using it for the new hire training, right? Everybody, as soon as you log in, you'll go to this course that everybody has to go through. Maybe it's HR onboarding, maybe it's company culture training, whatever. Anything that's consistent to everybody, that's what they're using auto enrollment for. And then ultimately, it's just improved efficiencies, right? Taking all this stuff and automating it so the admin has a more hands-off role and can spend their time doing more of what they need to do. So the next series of slides here, this is going to be about, 10 or so things. are the different plugins that we tried. Some we end up using, some we didn't, some we used in different ways. So the first one was this absolute requirement that the users can only access from certain locations. So I found this plugin called Authentication by IP Address. And so like I said at the beginning, all the stores work on a virtual private network. These are fake IP addresses here, but they have a couple of IP addresses, right, that are specific to their stores. And so we put this in place and we say, okay, the users can only authenticate themselves if they're coming from one of these two locations, right? And so once we put that in place, we have a plugin here that I didn't find a screenshot for, but it's another one called Local Login that provides an alternate login page to Moodle's login URL. So instead of Moodle/login PHP, whatever it is, it becomes a local address that they can customize so that if a manager or something needs to log in from home, which they wanted to allow, just not the staff, it was a special URL that kind of skips by the regular login process and lets them authenticate directly. I think it's a plugin called Local Login. It's not available on the Moodle, repository. It's on GitHub. That's why I didn't really share it, but anyway, yeah, so that was a bypass that they used. So then we started looking at custom profile fields. These, if you're not aware of it, if you go to the site admin area and then users, and then inside of that, there's the profile fields that you can come in and set up special ones. I've used these a lot in some sites. We had Catherine, actually, we had a client a few years ago that used custom profile fields extensively and basically created the job application form as the Moodle sign-up sheet. So somebody would come in and they would fill the same stuff like first name, last name, email, but there was probably 40 other custom fields that simulated what you would do on a job application, right? Your work history, what your job was, previous position, second previous, third previous, dates, things like that. So filling out the account registration form, took some time, but that gave the organization a lot of information they could use to leverage automated tasks and reporting and such later. So in this case, we're worried about what role a person has. If I were to click on this thing, it would say sales associate, management, inventory control, things like that, right? So this is kind of like, what job do you do? And then there's the store location. If I pull down that, it's a big list of 74 or so. And then department is similar to role, but for example, I could be a sales associate in the guitar department, right? So the department is more about what part of the store I work in. The role is what I do. And then this other one here is the secondary department. This one was something we wanted to try. I think they're still using this, but the idea is that the secondary department gives the person an opportunity to show something else that they're interested in. It's like, yes, I work in operations, but I'd like to know more about guitars, or I work in guitars and I want to learn more about sales, whatever. So I'll show you. Yeah, okay. Of course.
So is this custom profile fields like already part of Moodle, or is this a separate plugin that you added?
Custom profile fields is part of Moodle, but there aren't any out of the box. It gives you an opportunity to create them yourselves.
Okay, and then the drop downs, that's the part, because I use some of these custom profile fields, but I've never done the drop downs like with a preset list. If there's time, could you show us that a little bit?
Of course. Yeah, I can bring up a Moodle site and show you how to do that. So there's different profile fields you can use. There's simple ones like check boxes, the pull down list, where basically it's a box and every row is a menu item. It could be short answer where they just type in whatever they want. I think there's 4 or 5 different types that you can use. You can also set them to be required. That's what these asterisks mean here. Like this profile field has to be there. You can also say whether you want the profile field to be on the sign up, the registration page or not. You can also say if the field is locked, right? Is it populated somehow by somebody that has permission, but the user themselves can't change it? Is it visible to other people? So there's a lot of parameters you can use to set the field up, how it's used, who can see it, who can change it, that sort of thing. You want to be careful with some of this, because if you come in and say, I'm going to have a role field and I'm going to make it required, and you have a bunch of users in the system already, then all of a sudden you got a profile field that everybody has to complete. They don't know that it's there or that they need to complete it. They log in, immediately go to their profile page because the system's saying, oh, you have an incomplete field that's required now. And they'll go, why am I going here? And they'll go home and they'll go back to their profile field.
Yeah,
And so,
I did that once, by mistake.
yeah, it's real frustrating, especially for the users because they can't figure out what's going on. And immediately it's like, hey, management, support, whatever. So my recommendation is if you got an established site and you're going to make something like that required, send a message out to everybody and say, hey, by the way, the next time you log in, here's what you're going to have to do. So, excuse me. Good question. All right, so another thing we did was cohort based on profile field. So I explained what cohorts were, right? If you're in a cohort, put you in some courses. There's a plugin out there called cohort by profile field. The concept here is, okay, I've got a cohort, right? I've got 47 cohorts, one for each store location or all of my departments or however I'm going to do it. Now I need to get people in them. And so they were kind of using cohorts before, but it was very manual, right? Management would send a message to corporate to say, hey, I just hired Bob at the store, 27. He's my drum guy. He's a new hire. And so they'd send that message off and corporate would go like, okay, we'll create an account for him. We'll send a password. We're going to put him into a cohort, but we also need to put him in this other thing. So here's his enrollment key. Tell him to click on that. And, all of that back and forth. That's literally how they were handling that. So now with this profile field-based cohort membership, this is a screen grab, but the list is quite long. It's basically saying if some profile field matches a thing, then put them into a cohort. So they already had the drums cohorts. They already had the store location cohorts. All we did is say, if their profile field says drums, then put them in the drums cohort. If their profile field says we work at store 20, then put them into that cohort, right? So that's all it's doing is once the fields are there and they're populated in the user's profile, then put them into the cohort based on the rules.
This would be a great tool for us. This is the final linchpin for us to get away from manually enrolling people.
Yeah, and it happens automatically. You can watch it. I showed him. You can go into two windows and say, here's the cohorts, here's a profile. You go to somebody's profile, you change a pull down and go, okay, I say my choice for custom field A is, XYZ. You save the profile, you refresh the cohort, there's a new person in it.
Wow, that's amazing.
It happens automatically.
Oh,
I just want to say that I use this plugin for the Mountain Moot Commons. So everybody who enrolled for Mountain Moot checked a box for what segment they were in, like whether you were elementary, middle school, higher ed, or whatever. And it automatically put you into in the group inside of the Mountain Moot Commons course. And then if you notice when you were posting, like in the introduction in the open forum, you had a little icon next to you. Mm-hmm. That was the group image that you were automatically put in by cohort, by profile field. So it's like you enroll, you check this, you get put into this course in this group, which then gives you that little badge when you post on anything. And it was awesome. And I hadn't known about this before this year. So yeah, this is great.
Okay, mind blown here. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm trying to find the link to this.
It saves a lot of time for organization and management. It really saves a lot of time.
Thanks for sharing that link, Joel. I was actually searching for that in a side browser. I'll add that to the course. I thought I put all of the links to the plugins and stuff that I'm looking here, but I don't think I put the cohort one there for some reason. So thanks for sharing that. I'll add that to the course label later. Okay, so now that you did this, I don't have a screenshot of this, but you'll notice these tabs here. There's add a new rule, cohort members, cohorts to be managed. This is the key one here to remember is if you have a cohort like drums and you go in here and start setting this up, you have to say, okay, which cohorts is this plugin going to manage? And I got myself stuck on this when I first started using it because what happens is if the plugin is managing the cohort, you as an admin do not. You can't go into a cohort and just put people into it randomly. It's controlled by the plugin. And so if you want to manipulate that cohort in some way, you have to come in here and remove it from the cohort managed list, what's managed by the plugin, and then you can go in and do stuff with the cohort, and then you have to go back in and add it again to be managed. So that's something to remember. And you see that here as the source. if you put this together and you see a cohort name and the stuff, and then you come over here and the source says profile field-based cohort membership, that means there's no editing. You can't do anything other than rename it, right? You can't manipulate it. You can't do anything to it. You can still use it as your enrollment source, but you can't like manually add users to it and things like that. Eric says, can you edit the user field and then the plugin will pull the user? Can you unmute yourself, Eric? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. I don't know if Eric has a microphone. Not really right now. Okay, that's fine. Can you edit the user field and then the plugin will pull the user into the cohort? Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. I think that's what I said earlier is that, let's say, for example, we go back to that secondary profile field, right? And so at first, this isn't a required field. It's not populated. It's just waiting. But then I have a cohort somewhere that is looking for secondary department field to be populated. And that plugin says, put you into this cohort, and it's just kind of waiting. And so somebody goes in and says, yeah, I'm interested more in the technology side of things. So they do that, they update their profile. The plugin is waiting for that to happen. And if that does happen and I change my secondary department to tech, then it puts me into the tech cohort, and the cohort puts me into whatever course is appropriate based on that cohort. So it is live. I don't know if cron seems like a thing that cron would do, but it happens so immediately that I don't think cron does it. I think it's just in the system. All right. So now I've got people getting into cohorts automatically instead of manually. So you can imagine that saves a lot of time. The cohorts are set up so that they are, grouping people in certain ways, like I said, based on location, department, that sort of thing. Now you start saying, okay, well, how do you connect it to your course? Cohort sync is actually an enrollment method. So if you change the sorry, Floyd just asked a question. If you change the profile field, does it then remove? That's a configuration in the plugin. There's a setting in there that says, what happens when the criteria isn't met anymore? Do you leave them in the course or do you pull them from it? And the cohort field is up to you. If you come in and say, if the field doesn't match anymore, then unenroll. That's really a choice you want to make, because what a user could do is say, put them into tech, and they go, oh, I didn't mean to be in tech, I needed to be in something else. So they switch it. So if they go through every menu, it'll push them into every cohort they choose along the way. But if you change it to say, if the field doesn't match anymore, then remove them from the cohort. That's what they chose, because they didn't want people just like populating everything. And so what the result is if a user comes in and changes a profile field that is connected to cohort membership, and they change it, then the plugin will pull them from the one cohort and put them into the other cohort. And by the nature of the cohorts, if you're not a member of the cohort anymore, you're not enrolled into the corresponding courses. So it actually unenrolls you and re-enrolls you somewhere else. And that enrollment method is called cohort sync. So once you set up the cohorts, if you want to use them, you go into your course, you go down into the course admin area, users, and then there's enrollment methods. And enrollment methods are how a person gets access to the course. How do they get in? Are they manually enrolled? Do they type in a key? Guest is an enrollment method. There's a lot of enrollment ways. Cohort sync is a built-in one in Moodle. You don't need a plugin or anything for this. Well, it is a plugin, but you don't need to add it. It's in Moodle out of the box. If you don't see cohort sync as an available method that you can add to a course, an enrollment method, it means you don't have any cohorts set up, right? So as soon as you have a cohort that's available, either at the system level or at the category level, remember cohorts can be set up at course category level, then that cohort is available as a source of learners for courses that belong to that category. The cohort set up at the system, by default, it's every course can use it. So you actually create an instance of this enrollment method for cohort sync. You give it a name. You say, is it active? Which cohort am I pulling from? What role do they have and what group do they go in? In this case, the group one is kind of irrelevant. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit because of auto groups. But if I'm saying, for example, this is associate training, right? The cohort membership is saying, put them into such and such a course because I'm training associates. This is an active cohort and sync method. So anybody that's in the cohort is going to come in. The a cohort name itself is just the same, or it could be different like this. And then you say, what role do they have? If they're in this cohort, put them in this course as a student. If I'm talking about associate managers, then I'm pulling from an associate manager's course, and I would probably give them the role of something like non-edit teacher, for example. So you can come in and say, what cohort am I pulling from, and what role do the members of that cohort have, and potentially in a group. So once you save that, and then you go to look at your list of users, immediately anybody that's in the cohort is in the course as a student or teacher or whatever the role is that you designate, right? Again, it's just an automatic thing that happens. So now we start looking and say, okay, cohorts is great, but maybe we want to get a little bit more specific, right? We want to take a certain action. So we started looking at this one called profile field enrollment, similar to cohort membership based on profile field. This one's enrollment based on profile field. So if a profile field matches something, enroll them into the course. If it doesn't match anymore, then unenroll. So this is kind of the question before, is what happens if the rule doesn't match anymore? In this case, they want to say unenroll. And then we say, okay, which custom profile field are we looking to? In this case, that's the secondary department thing we wanted to try, right? If they say they're interested in something, let's put them into such and such a course. That course could be, hey, we're glad you're, wanting to improve yourself and move up in the company, or we're glad you're, wanting to learn about new stuff, or cross training or whatever. The courses might be very specific to the fact that the person is selecting this as a secondary option, or it could just be putting them into the course that everybody else in because that's what they said they're interested in. And then coming in here, this enroll users immediately at login. This thing here, they wanted this to happen because they didn't want to delay. It does have an impact on the performance, right? If it says it, if you have a lot and coming in at the same time and all of that, they didn't really notice anything. So we checked this and basically said, if the profile field matches something, that put them in there. This is important because the user could make the choice, right? They could go to their profile field, but it could be a manager comes in and edits the user's profile, changes the thing because they want that person to learn more about something, cross-training or whatever. In their case, they're only using the secondary department, but you could set up as many as you want, right? It could be 5 areas of interest or something, excuse me. Let's see, Rob says, for when appropriate, can cohort enrollment types be auto-assigned to all courses in a category? Yeah, that's a good question. I think you would have to look at category roles. Typically, students aren't enrolled at a category level. You can do teachers. That's a little bit more common. I'd have to look at that, though, and see if I could use if I could use that to give somebody the role at a category level. I don't think so, because it's an enrollment method, and categories don't have enrollment methods. You can assign roles, but you're not setting up an enrollment method for a category, if that makes sense, right? I can go into a category and say, you're a category teacher. I could technically modify the student role to say you can be a category student, but it's not an enrollment method. It's just somebody says you have that role in admin.
Yeah, I guess my question wasn't so much to do it to the category, because you used to be able to do roles based on category, and that kind of went away. But I have to manually add the enrollment method to every course within a category.
Correct.
And so at university, it might be, hundreds in a category. So it's a little bit time consuming to do that.
It is, yeah. But if you plan it out ahead of time, then you can, set it up as part of your course templates, for example, and do backups and restores and things like that to bring in your enrollment methods. But for an existing site, if you're trying to implement this, it will take some time to put some of these things in place, because you're trying to, automate things that exist already. And it did take some time for them to go in and add enrollment methods to all of their courses and things like that.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, so now we say I'll just review this a little bit, right? So we've got some custom profile fields we can use. We're dealing with cohorts. These guys had a little bit of a kickstart because they were already using cohorts, just not efficiently, but they were there. We did tweak them a little bit to keep them more organized. They were a little bit scattershot, so we cleaned them up so they had numbers on them and things like this. So then we say, okay, now if you get into a course, do we want students grouped, right? Auto groups is one of my favorite plugins because typically in a course, you go into course admin, users, groups, create a group, create a group, create a group, create a group, put people in the group, right? All this kind of stuff. Auto group, you can come in and say, what kind of roles do we want to have auto grouped? What field are we matching to? You don't even have to create a group. So if I go into a course and say, yeah, we're going to group by the store profile field. Excuse me, I got a rough throat today. So you go into a course, you have this plugin, and if you go down to course admin, users, groups, you're going to see a new menu item at the bottom when this plugin's enabled that says auto groups. So you click auto groups and you say, okay, what's the custom profile field that I want to match to? What role can be used here? You get it all set up. And as soon as you do that, then if somebody is enrolled into the course and a profile field matches the profile field that you're using over here, then if that group doesn't exist, it will create the group based on whatever's in the profile field, and it will put the user in it. So when we first started doing this, we didn't have any groups. We deleted them all. And then we came in and said, okay, we're going to group by store. And then as soon as we started populating the custom profile fields for everybody, it goes, oh, here's somebody in Central, one person, here's the group. We did it, you know, for Manhattan, all of a sudden, boom, you had a new group in here. It just creates it automatically, puts the user in it, and then you can see here's how many people are in each one of these groups, and this goes down the list, right? So again, once you get this set up, it just happens. Then you can go in and say, okay, we're using groups in the course, possibly on the activities. There's course settings in there whether you want to do with separate groups or visible groups. So in some cases, they wanted it visible, right? We need to know people are in groups, but we want them to interact with each other, right? There's other situations in some courses where they want separate groups. We need everybody in groups and we don't want them to see each other, right? That could be, you know, for whatever reason in this course, we just don't want them to interact. And so we keep the course and all of the activities in the course separate by groups. And that's just a simple course setting. So that was a group mode. And then we start looking at, okay, well, what about courses that everybody needs to take? Do I need to have a cohort with everybody in it? Do I need to like manually enroll everybody automatically? However, so we use this auto enroll plugin for this. And this is the one where I was telling you that is typically for, you know, courses that everybody belongs to for whatever reason. So in this case, it was the new hire training. As soon as you start with a company, there's a half dozen courses that everybody has to be in, right? It's welcome to the company, fill out this form, respond to something, take the onboarding training, dealing with customers. You know, there's certain things that everybody has to do. And you could do that with cohorts, but with this one, we're just going in and saying that as soon as you log into the site, you're going to have the role of student in a course, and there you go. I can send a welcome message saying, welcome to the company. We just drop you into 6 courses. Here's they are. You know, I could put all this together. And as soon as somebody logs in, boom, they're in the courses. It shows up on the dashboard automatically, right? In this case, they did not allow them to unenroll themselves, but you could do that and say, well, we automatically put you in the course. You can pull yourself out if you want to. In this case, it's kind of like the required stuff they have to do. So if there's new updates or they want to send a message to everybody, that sort of stuff, everybody is enrolled into these courses all the time. All right, so here's the big solution, right? So we are limiting access by IP address so they can't log in from anywhere else. We're automatically putting people in certain courses as soon as they're hired, as soon as they have an account. Certain profile fields that the user can control or the manager can control. We'll put people into cohorts and courses and groups automatically. So the user drives a lot of it. The store managers drive a lot of it. The admin drives almost none of it now, where before the admin was driving pretty much all of it. The secondary profile fields that we talked about can be used to give people the opportunity to advance in their jobs, to cross-train, things like that, right? So again, we're just using secondary, but you could have 5, like, you know, pick 5 things that you think you might want to do someday. Fill out this profile field if you think you're ready for a promotion or something like that, right? And then using the things, you can hook those profile fields to other stuff. So now all of a sudden you put this in and managers, store managers, now can have more control over things, their staff and such, without being a site admin. What they were doing before, and I don't think I mentioned this, was they were giving store managers site admin access because they didn't know any other way around it, right? They wanted the store managers to do stuff for their store and for their learners. And the only way they could do it was by giving them site admin access. So they had like 50 site admins, which was nuts. So now with special roles, the store managers actually have a store manager role that gives them the capability of working with their learners and dealing with the courses and reporting and that sort of thing. And now because of that, offloading all that work, then the corporate admin now has more time to focus on the site, reporting of the site, collecting information from the managers, reporting to his bosses saying, yeah, this online training thing we do actually works now. And that was a big deal for him because now his time he could spend more focusing on learning, reporting, dealing with reports, telling the company owners what was going on. It made him much, much more, I want to say accountable. It made him look better in the eyes of his bosses, right? He was running a successful operation instead of something he just said, well, yeah, it works. I just can't prove it, right? But I work on it all day. So any questions at all? Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. So this is what I'd like to know. If anybody has anything they've done, like, Ryan says he's using cohorts extensively in Mountain Moot. This, of course, isn't all the plugins. It's just the ones we came up with for this particular scenario. And so I'd like to learn if, maybe there's something here that's confusing to you, something that you've tried that worked differently, some other plugin or method or whatever. Like I said, there's a half dozen ways to do everything in Moodle. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what works for you and your process and your organization. So I'm curious if anybody has some other technique or method or plugin or something you've used to offload that responsibility from one person and automate it.
I'm a big fan of MetaLink.
Okay.
It saves me a lot of time because our registrar, so the integration from LDAP that we used to enroll everybody in registrar is one. But the registrar might have students that enroll for credit or not for credit, or like with other, like a lab with a dog or a lab without a dog. That's anthozoology. I know it's weird, a lab with a dog, but the registrar will have 15 different courses for what is functionally one course, Mm-hmm. So I do this, like I create a new course and I just MetaLink all that stuff into it.
Yeah.
And then you can set up groups on that MetaLink enrollment method. So
Okay.
they automatically go into a group so that the teacher can, if they do need to send an announcement to everybody that does have a dog or doesn't have a dog for anthozoology, they've got groups that they can use to do that, to like send out the announcements. So
cool.
MetaLink's huge for me.
Yeah. Another one that I wanted to try, which I just learned about recently, was sub courses. Have you all heard of that one? Sub course?
I'm using Subcourse to track OPI renewal unit credit. So
okay.
Every course that you enroll in Mountain Moot, there's that OPI renewal unit credit, which has a grade value of the hourly value of that session. So like in the longer sessions, the 3-hour sessions, it has a grade value of 3. And in shorter sessions, it has a grade value of 1. And then there's this master course where there's a bunch of sub courses that send those grades over into that grade book. Mm-hmm. So as you go through the conference, your grade, levels up throughout the conference as you fill out these renewal unit forms. And then at the end of the conference, everybody's going to be able to download a custom certificate that has that grade as their hourly.
So each sub course becomes a graded, its grade becomes a gradable or graded item in the master course.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of creating what Workplace does as a program, right? It's a program that contains courses. You have a master course that contains other sub courses.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Cool. I'm not sure what you mean, Eric. What's useful for American teachers only? Not sure what you mean by that. Reading Rick's messages. OPI.
OPI. Yeah.
It's actually Montana. It's Montana has a department called the Office of Public Instruction, OPI, Montana OPI. I believe that's how you're using it, right, Ryan? Continuing ed for the OPI guys in Montana.
Yeah, Jessica works for OPI. She can explain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tried to get a job with OPI once and I was denied. I wanted to be the Moodle admin. I think you have the job I was going for like 5 years ago or so.
Probably. They told me that I almost didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm here neck and neck because in my interview, I didn't know what platform it was. And then they asked me towards the end, like I was asking questions and they're like, well, what platforms have you used? And I was like, well, mostly Moodle, but I don't really like it. And so I was like, but what platform is this? And they're like, oh, it's Moodle. And in my head, I was like, well, I'm not getting this job.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so the renewal units, Montana teachers, so K-12 teachers need 60 hours every 5 years to renew their license. And so one renewal unit is 1 hour. And so this conference for every session is giving one renewal unit for those K-12 teachers to use towards their license renewals.
Cool. Let me get the Zoom chat going more here.
Well, Daryl, we just opened up a second admin position. I suppose you like your job.
I think I'm good now, but yeah, I think I was a little overconfident before, when I did the application and talked about my Moodle admin experience and everything. I was just like, how could they not hire me? But yeah, I was a little surprised. Anyway,
we would have made a good team.
Good for you, though.
So just a quick question: how about cleanup, like after the fact? Like that's always something that's kind of forgotten about.
Oh yeah, something I didn't say is that we did this on a sandbox site first, right? We copied the live site and then we started putting in plugins and testing things, and we go, whoa, that didn't work, really, And so we would override it. We went through probably 4 iterations of the sandbox before we went, okay, here's the arrangement that we want. And then we had to go in and redo the work on the live site, which was in production, people using it. So we didn't want to disrupt everything along the way as we tested stuff. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking more of students or people kind of unenrolling themselves from courses and things after they no longer need.
Well, in some
access.
cases, that's preferred, right? It's giving ownership of the enrollment and the learning to the learner. In some cases, that's what you want. If they want out, let them out, right? You still have requirements. And in those cases, you would say you can't unenroll yourself. The plugin puts you in no matter what. So in some ways, it's forced, and in other ways, it's optional, right? It just kind of depends. So it's a bit of an intricate process. Rick says, surprised to me how independently developed plugins are coordinating without breaking anything. So we did break some stuff. We had things that were counteracting each other, right? Some profile field was trying to do a thing to cohorts, but at the same time, the one plugin was trying to do another thing. And so we kind of had to channel this a little bit and say, for this purpose, we're using this profile with this plugin to do a certain thing. And this other one is using this profile to put them in the cohort. And this one is automatically signing whatever. So they're different channels in a way. I was trying to figure out a way to visualize that, but I couldn't really. But the things all work in conjunction with each other. They just serve kind of different specific purposes. So. Yeah, Rick, I'll share the slideshow. I'll probably save it as a PDF and pop it up into the course later. So, any other questions or comments? You're welcome. All right, so here's the outcome that we all hope, right? We want happier employees and learners. In this case, it's employees. It could be students, whatever. I think that when a student can direct their own training, they're more invested in it. They're just not dumped into the thing by choice. They have options, right? So I think that invests them more into the system. And then once they do have that investment, then the courses that they are required to partake in, then they're more invested in those as well. The employees themselves become more productive because it's not like, hey, welcome to the company. There's this new hire training. We'll let you know more about it when the site admin comes back from vacation, right? Or he's really busy right now. As soon as I hear back from him, I'll let you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, come to Montana, Eric. Whenever you want. Okay, so cost savings. I can't even calculate the amount of time this guy's saving. I mean, he was literally doing like 40 hours a week of Moodle admin work. And now he's just able to save a lot of time and ultimately a lot of money because of that. And he can just focus on more things. You have more talent because trained employees become talented employees, right? That's how you develop talent, is through training and experience. I don't know why I said extended hours there. And then store control at the management level. And that was a key thing, is enabling the store managers to do their job, which is manage their store. Their store is their responsibility. It's not the site admin's responsibility. So that was a big thing for the managers, is really enabling them to have the responsibility that they are really responsible for. So that was a fumbled statement.
All right.
Any other questions?
I have to get to set up the keynote, so I've got to end this session.
Okay. So here's the promotional stuff, and thank you. So, all right.
Thanks, Daryl. All right, everybody. We'll see you over in the keynote, okay?
Talk to you later. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.